Corvette C8.R compare to the other GTEs here on iRacing? Once again, with my limited ability of describing things and with my limited ability of driving iRacing cars to a certain extent, I come to the conclusion that this GTE is very friendly on the brakes. Like, as you can see, the initial braking very, very hard. And I remember that the BMW, despite being strong on the brakes, easily locks up the tires. And remember, when you lock up the tires on iRacing, especially in the front, you lose so much grip on the front end tires that you simply understeer out of the track. And yeah, that needs to be said, that this Corvette feels a lot more forgiving in that regard. Means you can press quite hard on the brakes. You can actually also quite nicely trail brake without the car being sent into a weird slide, which is effectively nice. Seeing for Stowe, despite the car wanting a little bit to oversteer or snap oversteer, especially in high speed braking, in high speed braking zones, the car wants to snap easily. But I think that could be down to the brake bars are currently run 51.2. Gonna put that 51.5 and see whether it improves the situation. I never took out a GTE around Silverstone on iRacing just yet, but to me the BMW at least feels a lot more heavier. So I would compare the Corvette in terms of handling more towards the Ferrari 488 GTE rather than towards the BMW M8. Car feels definitely a little bit more mobile, a little bit more easy to turn. That said though, I think it's a great car for trail braking. Like, you can really have a wide range of brake attachments. That you can make use of. So let's see whether we lose the rear into Cops Corner again while doing a little bit of trail braking. No, not as much as before. So I think putting that baseline setup brake bias to 51.5 has been an improvement on that one, which kind of eliminates the point of the high speed snap oversteer when it comes towards braking. I don't know how you guys experience it just from looking at it, but to me the car seems very easy to be controlled. It doesn't weirdly snap on the rear end. Yes, there is a little bit of the wiggle still when going into Stowe, but can also easily smash the throttle to a certain extent and just drive out of the corner. So if any, the car wants to spin on you into the entry of a turn, but once you release the brakes and start to just coast on the car, it sort of also grips again and finds itself in balance again, which I think is pretty nice. So again, here it is probably the entry where it is a little bit twitchy on the rear, but once we come towards an exit, it feels like being on rails, and I think that can be good for lap time, because, you know, you can sort of deal a little bit with turn in oversteer, but on the exit you want to have a solid rear end so you can make use of all the traction and power out of the turn onto the next straight. That said, I think you need to be driving really, really aggressive though to make the rear end spinning. So if you see us going into Vale and Club, we're quite late on the brakes there. So to put into context, I admire the sense of driving. I admire the driving style, or the way it drives. I actually admire that over the BMW M8 GTE. I haven't looked at the changelock too much, but the BMW M8 on the force feedback also felt like really numb. And don't get me wrong, it's not like you get a massive amount of feedback from the Corvette on the force feedback. But I think there is a little more feedback, at least, or a little less numbness coming from the steering wheel compared to the BMW, let's say. To the Porsche, I can't really compare it. Never did enough running on there, but then, you know, Porsche 911 RSR, that car requires straight braking a big time, and needs to be driven in a very specific way. So comparing it to the available GTE Corvette we do have on rFactor 2, oh dear.
Okay, Michael, you need to watch the track limits.
Lotzema Lockett, hey there, thank you very much for the follow on the Twitch channel, and welcome to this first look at the Corvette here on iRacing. I did that yesterday with the LMP2 car, and I may have forgotten to add one thing. The LMP2 car on rFactor 2 got that weird issue that at certain times, it just locks the rear and sends you into a big slide. Obviously, if you kind of brake into straight direction, the rear locking can be dealt with. But once you start the dray braking thing and the rear locks, you're gonna lose the LMP2 car on rFactor 2. Nothing you can do with it. That is something, of course, the iRacing LMP2 car didn't show. Something else that both cars do not show compared to the rFactor 2 version is that excessive slip angle driving that sort of appears in rFactor 2. Lotema, you think that the baseline set feels odd? I want to put that into context. I think both the LMP2 set and the Corvette baseline set gets a total different meaning when I currently spin on that quote, but I think both of those baseline sets are considerably alright. Like, you can drive the car with it, you have kind of nice balance. I think, and to put that into context, you may be right, it feels odd in the way that those cars on the baseline set feels way too stable compared to a setup that allows you to go quick on the racing. So in that regard, I think obviously the baseline set is not very competitive, hence feels too safe and not oversteery enough, or not aggressive enough. And in that way, I think you're quite right. That both the baseline sets on the LMP2 and the Corvette, they feel weird in the way that they actually feel way too stable. You know, you can just drive out of the box with them and be quick. I remember with those top setups, usually when I race GT3s, GTEs, or the Formula 3, I remember that every single time I went out on track, I have to be like overly cautious not to crash, especially in the first couple of laps, and this doesn't feel like it here by all means. So coming back to the point, compared to rFactor 2, both the LMP2 and the Corvette sound a lot better, a lot more natural, a lot more realistic on iRacing. Then in rFactor 2, for those of you that watch me my Virtual Endurance Championship races, they have seen the GTEs last year literally in every corner, no matter whether slow speed, high speed, mid-average speed. In every corner you saw the GTEs going in a weird slip angle, somewhat sideways. That is of course not the way iRacing cars are driven. In the GTE, the problem is more severe than in the LMP2 on rFactor 2.
59.2. 73 time is fast.
But also I consider the GTEs on R Factor 2 not in the very best shape in that way.
Track
I
limits,
remember
validate this lap.
me driving the BMW M8 in Le Mans and in other series. I'm no big fan of the GTEs in R Factor 2. Like the rear end feels so loose, and you don't have that on neither GTE really. It takes quite a bit of setup work to set the GTEs up in iRacing in order to be quick and competitive. But at no point you drive them at that weird slit angle. So to compare them to R Factor 2, that's what I need to say on that one. Lottima massive understeer, but that was expectable. When braking, the rear tends to somewhat lose, and any curbs you try climbing will almost break your arms. It's too okay. Maybe I got wrong force feedback or different force feedback settings, but if I go over curbs and also go over sausage curbs, I'm gonna do that intentionally in club this lap. I did not find my steering wheel trying to break my wrists. Gonna have a check on that now. When braking, the rear end is somewhat loose. I only would say yep for stow, as we're also cornering in the high speed. So you saw it tried to somewhat kill me or try to spin on me, but not as severe as iRacing cars can do in general. So let's hit that curb. Well, let me say it this way. Yes, you feel the impact a lot, but not harder than I would expect it, to be honest. Well, I have yesterday driven... Have you driven the LMP2 car on Belle Isle? By chance? That's what I did. And that felt horrible. Not sure how the Corvette fell there. But the LMP2 around Belle Isle felt horrible. Apart from that, I do appreciate and like the dash it got. Probably nothing too important in general. I do appreciate the balance, so just as Lottima say, yeah, the baseline setup is pretty understeery, which was expected. So in order to go really quick on the race, you need to have that aggressive set turning. But that is, I want to say, standard for iRacing in a certain extent. Would I recommend that car to drive? Probably yes. Again, with not having a pro setup driven on it yet, it probably drives too gently, it probably drives too easy at the minute. But I consider it being a good racing car. I do like the front windscreen. The A-Soilers is not as massive as in the BMW, and I also think that the windscreen strips you can see right here is not as annoying as in the Ferrari. Gotta be interested what you say in the end.
Okay, Michael,
comparing the Vette
track limits
against the BMW. You really got that understeer, but then again, I think that the BMW feels heavier, the BMW feels a little bit more lazy. And despite the BMW is known for being good on the braking, I think the brakes of the Beamer are a lot more sensitive than on the Vette. So that actually takes it for the comparison, or for the first look, and for my recommendation on the feedback on the car. I hope that this could give you a little insight and was a little help in order to get forward for a decision whether to buy it or not to buy it. I think it's gonna be a fun race car, and we're gonna see it in IMSA, we're gonna see it in ILMS. I'm also pretty sure we're gonna see it in the endurance series that's been launched for season 4 in the GTE series.
You're 0.2 off your best in sector 2.
And yeah, really hope you liked that feedback and it was some good use for it for you guys.